Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We have Ryan Grimm on. He's going to break down why fracking executives are getting big bonuses even as their businesses go bankrupt. Classic American story.
It's really inspiring.
We also have Trita Parsi on. He's going to break down some big stories coming out of Iran that really have been completely undercovered in the mainstream media but have massive implications. So we'll talk to him about that. But we wanted to start with a lovely op-ed from Mick Mulvaney that we both just loved.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. We still have a coronavirus testing problem. I love that CNBC picks this headline, but they're right. The issue, though, is that deep within the op-ed is that Mulvaney makes the case against fiscal stimulus. Mulvaney says that, you know what, the economic recovery is back, we're already okay, and if Congress is going to pursue anything, even though they shouldn't, if they pursue any fiscal stimulus, they should do a capital gains tax cut and a payroll tax cut.
Okay.
Oh, so they want to index capital gains. I'm like, you can ask Mulvaney anything. You ask him in 2010, you're like, what should we do to juice the economy? You'll be like, payroll tax cut, capital gains tax cut. You can ask Steve Moore in 1985, what should we do? Payroll tax cut, capital. These people learn nothing. They have no new ideas, and it's incredible. Let's throw one of my tweets up there on the screen because this was so funny. Is that in the op-ed at the very end, when he's saying why we shouldn't spend money, is because he says that if we do, that we are going to overpromise and underdeliver. Thus, the solution he has is that we should underpromise and underdeliver so that we can lose the election now instead of losing the election in the future. This is galaxy brain level. Like, it's like, oh, you really think about this one, huh? It's incredible, really, watching it.
It is, and I'm laughing, but it's really not funny.
It's not funny because everybody else is going to lose.
Right, and this is, like you said, every year, every decade, every era, they would say the exact same thing. And I do kind of love that the piece that they put the headline on was about the testing, because that was kind of like, in-your-face
he
Trump.
Got to Drumpf, and
it's like, no. He's advocating for, like, a horrible libertarian, free market fundamentalist approach moving forward, like, well, if we're going to do anything, let's cut the capital gains tax. But not only that, the thing that he said did the most for us economically was deregulation and the Mexico trade deal, which just went into effect, by the way. So again, like, data, facts, science, none of that penetrates. That ideological bubble is so strong. Any scenario that you could put in front of them, they know exactly what to do. A capital gains tax cut.
Mulvaney was a very powerful man. He used to be a big figure in the Tea Party, in the Freedom Caucus. He was the White House chief of staff. Donald Trump, the supposedly populist president, hires this guy in order to run his White House for over a year. I mean, and now another HFC person is in charge. I won't criticize Meadows on this. He hasn't yet shown his colors on anything similar. But
although, I mean, Jeffrey Stein says behind the scenes he is also advocating for austerity. It's his ideology.
Not a surprise. And again, you see, this is so pervasive throughout Washington, which is, fiscal stimulus doesn't work. But if we are going to do it, got to cut he called it a boon to the middle class, cutting payroll tax cut. Somebody want to tell me there are 50 million Americans who have filed for unemployment since the beginning of this crisis. Now, we don't know the exact number of unemployed and all that. Everything is just too fluid. But 50 million, let's say the worst is 20 million, something like that. So how are those people going to get a payroll tax cut if they're not on the payroll? And also, this all comes whenever they're saying they're going to take away the extra $600 per week on unemployment, something I support, as long as there is a actual benefit to whenever you go back to the work and there's an equal amount of income being made up. Because all the economics analysis that we've seen right now says that money, that extra money, is what is keeping incomes high and consumer demand at the level where it is. And it's not good, but it's still fine. We're floating on a recession economy and not a depression economy.
The two things that actually really did something based on the data that we've seen, and remarkably really kept poverty from increasing.
It went down.
Poverty actually went slightly down, which is incredible. The two things were the plus up of $600 unemployment insurance and the one-time stimulus check. We did get some, again, Jeffrey Stein is such a great friend of the show and such a terrific reporter who has been all over. Listen, if you follow one person on Twitter and you want to know what's going on with the potential economic response, this is the guy. Anyway, he had some insights into Kudlow and what he's saying today about what some potential White House priorities may be for the next round of potential stimulus. All of this has been extremely fluid, but you see some of the same bad ideas here. You see the payroll tax holiday, you see the capital gains holiday. You can almost guarantee those things will make it in terms of the White House response because of that ideology. You see unemployment quote unquote reforms. That's what you were talking about, wanting to get rid of the $600 plus up, God forbid that people get any extra cash. Return to work bonuses, which is kind of problematic when you have people who've been in the workplace like risking their lives and now their coworkers are going to come back and get a bonus when they never got hazard pay. Right. You have maybe a PPP extension. Why is that a maybe? And then a more targeted form of direct stimulus checks. We've also covered some of the problematic issues with how they want to make that extremely restrictive in terms of who would actually receive it. So, I mean, if that's a list of priorities, that is woefully inadequate, especially as we get more and more data in about what the reality is for Americans right now. So on the home ownership front, you had about a third of Americans last month who missed their mortgage payments. You have 28 million Americans who may be evicted here very soon, especially if you are getting rid of the $600 plus up, if you are not sending out another big stimulus check. Like, if you're not doing those things, you have millions and millions of Americans who are going to be homeless. What are you going to do then? At the same time, there's reporting in the New York Times. Everybody should go and read. It's a heartbreaking piece about what small business owners are facing right now. And basically what they find in the data is that the rate of small business failure is accelerating. So month over month, more small businesses are closing their doors. Why? Because in the early days, they thought, okay, we got a little bit from the government. We got a little bit of a cushion. We can figure out how to make it through. We can improvise. And then when we reopen, we can get back to, we can weather the storm. But now in places like Texas, in places like California, where the virus is once again raging out of control and they're shutting down again, people are throwing their hands up. They can't make it. They can't do it. And there's no additional help from the government in sight.
Yeah, 60,000 small businesses have failed. And I think what you've done here is you've put together a picture of just how catastrophic things are right now. 28 million facing eviction, 60,000 small businesses on the brink. The unemployment plus up, which we have right now, which is basically the only thing that's keeping consumer demand where it is. Again, if we want to get people back to work, again, I something support, that money has to be made up. Not just 1-to-1. I think it needs to be made up in a 2-to-1 ratio. And why don't we have gratitude payments? If we couldn't pay them at the time, gratitude payments to every essential worker, a lump sum amount of if you were out there and you were out there on the front line, you get a recognition that you performed in high service.
I also think it's a fundamental misdiagnosis of what's going on. Like the idea that the reason jobs aren't coming back as quickly as because people don't want to work. Like, that's not the issue here.
Of course.
That's not the problem. I know you understand that. But I'm talking to these people who are putting together this insane, priorities. The idea that the only problem is, people are disincentivized from working, that is not the issue. The issue is you have a pandemic raging out of control, and you all can't get your heads out of the sand, we'll say, to do anything about it here. That's the problem. No, you want people to get back to work? Deal with the pandemic.
That's the best part of Mulvaney's op-ed. It's like as if we have to choose between the two. I'm like, my dude, that was, if you did this in February, maybe, right? Then maybe you didn't have to do any of this economic stimulus. The economy is a catastrophe right now. It's a literal catastrophe. How many days? 10 days until the unemployment expires, that payment? Where's Congress? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I hear that they're coming back sometime next week. Is there a Democratic plan on any of this? Haven't heard a word. Apparently Schumer and McConnell haven't even been on the phone. So what's going on? I mean, nothing. And like you said, it's all about, in terms of matter of priorities, which is that I know for certain that payroll tax cut, that capital gains thing and liability is going to go into the Senate bill. I can tell you that with 100% confidence.
Yes.
I cannot tell you with any confidence that the return to work bonuses will be in there, that a stimulus package or stimulus checks, which will pump the same amount of money into the economy that the previous one did, or that the payroll consideration, which we talk about here all the time from Holly and Jayapal, that is deader today than it was 2 months ago. Think about that. 2 months ago, when the economy was less in free fall than it is right now, it is now even being less considered as a viable political option. And you have Republicans on Capitol Hill who want to cap this thing at $1 trillion, just $1 trillion. It's like the amount of insanity here is just unbelievable. And at the same time, the worst actors in all of this are trying to offset all of the blame. Stephen Moore, who is, just a professional wrong person. I've taken it from Jason Johnson. I'm giving it to him. Is now drafting, according to the Daily Beast, let's throw it up there on the screen. He is now, assaulting writing a memo called Dr. Wrong after Dr. Fauci.
Oh my God.
And like we said, yeah, Dr. Fauci has been wrong, and so is the Surgeon General. The Fauci has said some dumb things and some dumb recommendations, particularly on masks. But the idea that it's Fauci that's the one that's holding back economic progress and not everybody, and not, the lack of handling of the coronavirus crisis is utter insanity. And this is, I wouldn't focus on it if it wasn't at the highest levels of the White House, which it envisioned just yesterday. Dan Scavino, who literally sits outside the door of the Oval Office and does many of the president's tweets. Let's throw this cartoon that Jake Tapper found from his Facebook page right up there on the screen. They call him Dr. Faucet. And they're like, Dr. Faucet wants to keep the economy. First of all, it's not even a clever cartoon. It's stupid.
And gross.
Yeah, and then you look at it and you're like, this is so ridiculous that they're trying to offload their complete failures onto this. And at the same time, Moore and any of these others are trying to blame Fauci as a cover and a smokescreen for a payroll tax cut and a capital gains tax cut and just not spending more money. It's like you have to put it all together with how much of a catastrophe that we're in and then the ideology that these people are pushing. And it makes me despair. It really does for what's coming.
They think they can rhetorical trick their way out of this and pin the blame somewhere else. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's only one way out of this, and it's to govern. It's to deal with the pandemic. It's to actually pretend like you care about it and demonstrate some interest in getting a handle on it. To do an economic response that gives people, this is what we've been talking about from the beginning. The most important thing is that they feel some sense of stability, right? Right now, there's so much terror, justifiably so, not only about the pandemic, but how you're going to make rent, how you're going to make your mortgage, what's going to happen when you get behind on your payments. How are you going to be able to put your life back together? And so you've got to provide people with some stability, and running around doing this Dr. Fauci thing. Look, the other thing, just from a purely political perspective, you're not running against Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, I know.
If you're going to go after anyone for political benefit, maybe train your fire on Joe Biden, which they've utterly failed to do. Their attacks on him are laughable and ridiculous, that he's, a left-wing Marxist puppet of AOC and whatever. I wish that was true, but it's not true. And the Biden campaign, they're not doing anything special. They're not doing anything incredible. But you watch his ads and you're like, oh, this is actually an ad that is normal and makes sense and provides reassurance and comfort to people. They've just unrolled a new general election ad in Texas, in the swing state of Texas, which, by the way, I think is actually a waste of money. Why go after Texas when you have more clear paths to victory? But it shows you how confident they are feeling. Let's take a look at a little bit of that ad.
I'm thinking of all of you today across Texas. I know the rise in case numbers is causing fear and apprehension. People are frightened, and they're especially worried about their parents, their grandparents, their loved ones who are most at risk. This virus is tough, but Texas is tougher. We can stop the spread, but it's up to all of us to do it. We have to step up and do both the simple things and the hard things to keep our families and our neighbors safe. Wear a mask, wash your hands, stay home if you can, and socially distance when you go out. I want every single American to know, if you're sick, if you're struggling, if you're worried about how you're going to get through the day, I will not abandon you. We're all in this together. We'll fight this together. And together we'll emerge from this stronger than we were before we began. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Not rocket
Great
science. You know, nothing complicated about it. There's not even any policy mention.
Don't
Just that sentiment of like, we're in this together. I'm going to be with you. I'm not going to abandon you. Is a million times better than what the Trump team is doing. And I mean, honestly, the Trump people are making the Biden people look like geniuses.
Yeah. What you said earlier was key, which is that all people want to govern. But you have to remember that these people don't believe in governance. They don't believe in public policy. That's why I pressure them as hard as I possibly. I go after those people harder than I go after Democrats because I know that they're the fools who will lead you down to a place where you're facing the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. They want to cut the capital gains taxes and a payroll tax cut all in the middle of this and not actually just give people money, which is what worked in the first place. So there you go.
Unbelievable. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.